Ever feel like, you're kind of killing it on paper, you've got the great job, the awesome place, all that, but then inside there's this like nagging feeling. This is really it kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. That disconnect, right, between what we achieve outwardly and how fulfilled we feel on the inside. It's incredibly common, and it's exactly what we're diving into today.
We're cracking open The Imperative Habit by Dave Rossi, and I'll be honest, this isn't your typical self-help fluff piece. Rossi takes us through his own journey, going from that successful but miserable place to a life where, like, happiness is real. And the best part, he gives us tools, practical stuff anyone can use.
And what makes Rossi so relatable is how honest he is about his struggles. I mean, the guy had it all, at least on paper, but he was deeply unhappy, lost his business, his marriage, his health even took a hit. Talk about a serious wake-up call.
It's almost like he was living out someone else's definition of success, And that's where this imperative habit comes in. It's like his system for like hitting the reset button, getting our actions to match up with what we actually value.
Yeah, totally. And a big part of that is wrapping our heads around this idea of the conditioned self. Rossi talks about it, imagine your brain, right? But it's running on this outdated software. All those beliefs we picked up growing up, expectations from society, those unconscious messages everywhere.
So it's not that we're like broken or anything, more like we're just operating on a program that's outdated.
Exactly. And Rossi has this funny example. Imagine completely losing it over a dirty microwave, right? On the surface, it's just a messy appliance.
But underneath, it can be like this huge trigger, right? All those beliefs about cleanliness, order, even our own self-worth get all tangled up in it. I've been there.
See? That's the conditioned self in action. It's not really about the microwave. It's about those deeply ingrained programs driving our reactions. And step one to changing is recognizing them.
So then how do we decode all that programming? How do we even start to figure out what those unconscious beliefs even are?
Well, Rossi gives us 7 key practices to do just that. But even before that, he talks about this fundamental shift. We got to move away from what he calls programmed goals. It's about getting a handle on our authentic goals instead.
Okay, now you've got me curious. Programmed goals versus authentic goals. Break that down for me.
All right, so think of those programmed goals as the shoulds, right? The stuff we feel pressured to do. Get that fancy degree, land that high-paying job, buy that big house, all that. A lot of times it comes from needing validation from others, being afraid of not measuring up.
And those programmed goals, they just play right into our conditioned selves, don't they? It's like we're on this hamster wheel chasing someone else's idea of success.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It creates this constant striving, but we never really arrive. The goalposts just keep moving.
So then authentic goals, those are about figuring out what really matters to us, not just to everyone else. No?
You got it. It's about making our actions line up with our actual values, passions, the things that actually bring us joy, real fulfillment.
So how do we tap into those authentic goals? I mean, especially when we've been so focused on those programmed goals our whole lives, how do we even begin to identify them?
Well, Rossi's point is it's not about some big personality makeover. It's more about building awareness, like just in our everyday lives. He talks about paying attention to those knee-jerk reactions we all have. When something sets us off and we just react without thinking.
Oh, yeah, I know those moments all too well.
Right. We all do. But instead of beating ourselves up about it, Rossi says we should see them as chances to learn and grow.
Okay, so then how do we actually turn those little wake-up calls into actual change that sticks?
That's where those 7 key practices come in. And get this, the first one might seem a little weird at first. Don't fear the outcome.
Hold on, are you serious? So we're just supposed to, throw caution to the wind and just hope for the best? I don't know about that.
No, that's not what he's saying. It's not about being careless. It's more about, instead of stressing about stuff we can't control, we focus on the things we can control.
Okay, I can see how that could be helpful, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely easier said than done. I mean, our brains are kind of hardwired to think ahead, try to plan for every outcome,
Well, for sure. But Rossi says when we're always focused on the what-ifs, on the outcome, it actually stops us from enjoying what's happening right now. Like, he uses this example, planning a party. You could totally stress out about the weather, which you can't do a thing about, right? Or you could just focus on making sure everyone has a good time, rain or shine.
I like that. It's like shifting your energy. Instead of worrying, you just focus on enjoying, even if things are a little uncertain.
Exactly. And that connects to the second practice he talks about. Focus on happiness. And again, he doesn't mean like chasing some fleeting pleasure, some surface level happiness.
Right. It's got to be something deeper than that. Something more, sustainable maybe.
Absolutely. Rossi says true happiness is this state of inner peace, real contentment that doesn't depend on what's happening around you. He even quotes Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who said real happiness isn't just feeling good. It's also about greater intelligence, power, creativity, all those things that really matter in life.
So it's not about just seeking pleasure or dodging pain. It's about finding that inner peace, that well-being that impacts everything we do.
Exactly. And the best part is, Rossi doesn't just stop at ancient wisdom. He backs it up with actual science. He talks about how true happiness releases endorphins in the brain, makes your immune system stronger, even boosts your brain power.
It's like investing in happiness pays off in every area of your life. Okay, I'm convinced, but how do we actually get there? Life can get pretty messy, and things don't always go our way.
And that's where the other practices come in. They're like tools for handling those curveballs life throws at us. He talks about acceptance, not just giving in to fate, but actually choosing to acknowledge what's happening without letting it control our reactions.
So we're talking about accepting reality without all the judgment, even when we don't love it.
Right. Exactly. It's about recognizing that a lot of times our own resistance to that's where our suffering comes from. He also talks about letting go of judgment, judging ourselves and other people. He says our judgments are usually based on these faulty ideas and expectations that aren't even realistic. And all that judging, it just creates a ton of stress and disconnection in our lives.
I like how he frames judgment as this form of comparison. It all comes back to those conditioned selves, huh? We're always measuring ourselves against some ideal, some standard that usually comes from outside of us, not our true values.
And when we can let go of that need to judge, it creates this opening for more compassion, more understanding and connection with ourselves and everyone else.
So we're ditching fear, focusing on happiness, practicing acceptance, and letting go of judgment. It's like we're building a pretty solid foundation for inner peace here.
Exactly. And to really cement that foundation, Rossi brings up this idea of faith as a practice.
Faith as a practice. I like the sound of that. But what does it actually mean? It kind of makes me think of, religion and stuff. But I get the feeling Rossi's talking about something a little different here.
Yeah, you're right on the money. It's not about religion in the traditional sense. It's more about finding that deep trust, that faith in ourselves, in how life unfolds, especially when things get tough.
Right. It's like that whole trust the journey idea. But how do we actually do that when we're facing those setbacks, when it's all up in the air?
Well, Rossi uses this example of his own experience with meditation. He said at first it was really hard for him, but instead of just giving up, he kept showing up, trusting that it would eventually click. And it did.
So it's about sticking with it, even when you don't see the results right away. Just having that, faith in the process.
You got it. And that actually ties into another one of these practices he talks about, non-attachment. Now, before you think we're saying you got to become some unemotional robot or something.
Right, because who wants to live a life without passion, without connection? Definitely not me.
Exactly. It's not about cutting ourselves off from people or things we care about. It's more about realizing our happiness. It can't depend on other people completing us or on everything always going our way.
It's we've got to find that sense of being whole on our own so we can show up in our relationships and our lives with more freedom, more joy.
Exactly. And Rossi tells this really powerful story about losing his best friend, Dave. It really forced him to look at his own beliefs about love and grief. And in the end, it led him to this deeper understanding of non-attachment.
It's like a reminder that even when we're going through loss, through pain, there's still that chance for us to grow, to understand things on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And, talking about growth, Rossi's not just preaching here. He lives it. He says it straight up. Really putting these practices into action is a journey. It's not like you just arrive one day and you're done. He's really open about his own struggles, the times he stumbled along the way.
That's actually really reassuring to hear. Even someone who's dedicated his life to this stuff, he still has those challenges. Makes it feel a lot more, attainable for the rest of us.
For sure. It's not like he's some perfect guru or something. He's a real person committed to growing, and he's just sharing the tools that have worked for him.
And I think one of the most powerful things in this whole imperative habit thing is how it shows us that choosing happiness that's in our control, it's not some fleeting feeling. It's something we cultivate through how we think, how we act, how we treat others.
Yeah, and he gives us those concrete practices, those 7 tools to actually do it. From really understanding those conditioned selves to embracing that non-attachment to making happiness a way of life, it's all there.
It's like he's handing us the keys to a more fulfilling, more meaningful life.
Yeah.
and not some cookie cutter version that's actually fulfilling for us, each of us.
Absolutely. And just like Rossi went back and reread those books that inspired him each time, getting something new out of them. Think about coming back to these practices, these 7 tools he's given us. See what you get out of them, how you see them, maybe even how you use them, how that changes as you weave them into your own life.
This deep dive, it's really just the beginning. Now, it's on all of us to take these ideas, these insights, and actually make something amazing happen. Like Rossi says, give yourself the most love and compassion. That's how we build a life that's not just successful on paper, but a life that feels like a success from the inside out.